Many of us work in a corporate setting where we have lots of people that we need to work with. We have managers that we report to, we have a long hierarchy of leaders that we report into. And for us to really do something significant in a company, we need access to resources, critical information, and skill. If you, as an individual contributor or a leader, if you want to have a significant impact, then you really need these three things. You need to be highly competent in whatever area it is that you are an expert in. Then you need support of your managers and your leaders who will give you key information as to what's really happening for the business that's working well and what's not working well that we need to fix. And they need to also give you people to do the work because you cannot do all of the work yourself. So that's where managing up is super important topic. In a sense, managing up is about the art of becoming powerful and proactive rather than being reactive and thinking that there's lots of politics going on. There'll always be politics in a company. But if we understand how to manage up those people that we report into and their hierarchy, if we can manage our managers, we will have access to critical information. We will have support with organizations backing us to do the work that we need. So that's why, as an individual, it is super important for you to understand what are all the things that can happen when you have to manage your managers up or you manage your leaders. Yeah, we will talk about several topics in this from my own personal experience, and I'll share with you some of the tips that helped me quite a bit and that I learned from actually making a lot of mistakes. So let's look at some of the topics first, and then we'll go into some more detail. First is about this topic is primarily about managing up, meaning those people that you report into. These people have an impact on your annual reviews and your compensation dollars, yeah, money that you make. Only those people we're going to be focusing on. There's lots of other things you need to do in an organization to be successful, which is you have to be able to work with your peers, work with folks that report into you, managing down, managing across. So that's a separate topic altogether. We're going to be focusing on managing up, like folks who actually have a direct impact on your compensation, a direct impact on your annual review, and have a significant say in terms of resources that you get and information that they share with you or they don't share with you. So we will have situations where we will learn like why this is a little complicated topic, why we will learn like why your boss is playing two roles. Yeah, they're playing the role of a judge or an evaluator where they're constantly checking your performance. At the same time, they're also supporting you and helping you learn and improve you on your weakness and all of that. So that's a inherent conflict built into it. And so when that happens, you're constantly torn. Like, hey, is this manager actually evaluating me when I share with them in confidence some of the weaknesses that I have? Or are they actually gonna have my back and support me and help me grow and not really count that against me? So every organization has this conflict. It's something that we need to understand. Um, the first step is we need to assess the relationship between how it is your relationship between you and your manager. I'll tell you also about like how to deal with new managers, new bosses, and we'll go about how we can present opportunities. There are, in a sense, problems that the organization is facing. What is the role of a mentor that we can use to managing up? How do we like persuade different people differently? Different managers are different. So how do we persuade them differently? We will see many times where you have leaders who are just micromanaging. So how do we deal with micromanaging bosses? How do we deal and build relationship with boss's boss, right? That's an important aspect. How do we provide feedback to a leader? Something's not working. How do we provide feedback? And there's many other things that we can talk about, but I also end with how do we deal with bosses that are conflict averse and bosses that um, you feel are just not supportive or not helpful. Yeah, So those are some of the topics. I told you why this is important. You need to get resources, you need to get critical information. Assuming you're competent, then you need to manage up, because these are the people, the leaders that you report into will give you that. Understand quickly that there is a conflict here. A leader is also a judge and evaluator, and they're constantly between those two extremes, balancing being an supporter for you, being an advocate for you, helping you grow, but at the same time they're constantly judging you, saying, hey, is this person actually worth the money that I spend with them or the time that I spend with them? So that's the inherent conflict that the leaders constantly going through, and they're constantly switching in that spectrum of those extremes. So the very first step, as I wanted to get into, is before you manage anyone, be it your subordinates or your bosses, you first need to assess the relationship with them. Yeah. So how do you assess your relationship, your existing relationship with them? Is you first check: are you on the same page when it comes to expectations? Are you meeting their expectations, and do you think that you're meeting expectations and they also think that you're meeting expectations? Or are you not on the same page? Are you surprised? Were you constantly improving on your performance, but you get a negative review and you were like completely surprised by that review? So that means you are not on the same page when it comes to expectations. So in your assessment of your relationship, check if your expectations match with your manager's expectations, and then check the level of trust. How much is the trust between the two of you? And trust is, in a sense, I have this CIRS. So the amount of credibility that you have, amount of intimacy that you have, and how much of self-aware, self-orientation this person has. Yeah. In a sense, you want to check whether these people that you report into, do you trust them? Do they trust you? And is it a two-way street where they share all the information with you candidly, or it's just that you're sharing all the information and they use that information to backstab you? So check that. Check the level of trust. Are you fearful when you share anything? Or are you actually not fearful, but you're like openly sharing what you know? Yeah. So assess that level of trust. Assess the level of expectation management that you think, that they think, that you should be giving. And then check whether you really understand your boss's strengths and weaknesses, their hopes and fears. Do you really understand them as a person? Or is it just that it's super transactional for you anyway, so you don't really understand it, and so you've not really spent time in it? If not, it'll be very hard for you to understand and really have a solid relationship that you can bank on. Check if they understand your goals, your growth opportunities, your hopes, your aspirations, and that they're actually doing what they're saying that they would do. If you see evidence where they break your trust, if you see evidence where they constantly say one thing but do something else, then that's hard to build trust. But at the same time, it'll be hard for you to know whether the goals that they have for you, for your growth, for the company's growth, for their own growth, is it in conflict with what your growth is? Yeah. So check and assess. That's the first step. Know the fact that your boss is an evaluator and a supporter at the same time. That's their job. Know the fact that these are the people that actually have influence on the money that you make. Once you have done the assessment, then you need to be okay that this relationship keeps changing. Look, I'll tell you my own experience. I got 9 bosses, formal bosses, that I reported to in 13 years in one of my careers. Yeah. 9 actual bosses. So that's less than one boss every 2 years, less than that. Yeah. So that means you're going to keep changing. Even if you assess this relationship and you do all of this hard work, you invest in them, the fact of the matter is that they'll move on to something else, or you will be moving on to something else, and you will have a new boss. So now you have a new boss. You have to do this all over again. But fact is, if you do a survey, ask 10 people, you will find that people are moving much more faster. They're not loyal as much to stay in one place at the same time. And there is lots of disruption that requires lots of reorganization, lots of change. So this skill of handling new people and onboarding a new boss, building this relationship quickly, and helping them get very productive very quickly is super important, because the fact is, when you get a new boss, they are brought in primarily to make change. They're brought in primarily to change the status quo, to make something that was not working work. They are here to fix something. So if you go in with this mindset of helping, if you're candid, if you're transparent, and if you're sharing and want to help with their transformational journey, then you will have a better relationship. So getting familiar with a new boss very quickly, establishing trust, assessing your relationship, investing in that relationship quickly is the key thing that's needed. Yeah. So new boss, super important. And for any boss that you will have time and again issues. You will have issues. You will have problems that, let's say your project is behind by 4 weeks, or your project is going to cost you much more contractor money or many more people to do the work, or that someone is actually poaching your key player in your team and that you're going to lose people, or that there is an issue with compensation, that other people are paying more money in other teams. There are, you know different ratings are given to different teams, and different companies are treating people differently than what you do. So there's going to be all kinds of issues. Yeah. People leaving, and then now you have less people to actually support your system. So anytime you have an issue, how do we present that issue is super important. If you present that issue with the mindset of a solution or an opportunity, then that changes everything. You not just go to your boss with the problem, you go to them with a problem and a solution, and frame that problem as an opportunity that we have in front of us to actually like retain some of these people, to actually not have cost overruns, and actually deliver something on time. So the way you do that is, I have this OPSAF framework wherein you look at an opportunity for every problem that arises, frame the problem. What is the problem? How is it that we can solve that problem and make that an opportunity that we can claim as a win? Once you do that, you propose solutions. You think through various pros and cons of various situations that you've come across. Like, hey, there are so many solutions to a problem. There's not just one problem. So can you think of various solutions and various pros and cons of those solutions, and have a recommendation that you own up to? You own up to that recommendation and say, hey, this is what we should do from all of these possible solutions that I have, and here are all the pros and cons, and this is what will be really helpful for us. So once you have a solution, then you have a concrete ask. Say, hey, I need X number of people immediately starting day 10, and we need to do this, this, and this, and these are the milestones. This is how we'll go forward, and this is when we'll create a plan. And you create some sort of frequently asked questions. So once you create a document that has an opportunity, problem set, solution, asks, and FAQ, send it to your leader. Set up a meeting with them once you've given them a day or two to read it, and then ask them if they have questions. Incorporate those questions that you answer into your FAQ so that other leaders, when they read the document, actually have this. So how do you approach a problem as an opportunity is a super important mindset, and start to think of solving the problems. Yeah. The other way in which you can manage up, and again, all of this builds trust. If you can actually solve problems, and if you can build relationships quickly, and if you can be self-aware in terms of assessing your relationship, and being aware where you are in terms of assessing your boss, this is important. These are all aspects of managing your leaders, because you go with an issue to a boss saying, hey, this is how we're going to solve it. Similarly, what you can do is, to manage your boss well, you can start to look for mentors who are like, let's say, peers to your boss. Yeah. these could be people who are equally experienced, if not more experienced than your boss, and then you look for them for advice. You look for them for practice. You look to them to navigate these issues that you have in your organizational hierarchy, in the political landscape. They'll tell you what issues to fight for. They'll tell you what issues to not fight for. And they'll tell you also how to fight for those issues based on your personal strengths. So looking for mentors who actually at least have one, if not two mentors, one within the company and one outside your company, who will guide you about how to navigate this situation, and who can validate, who you can practice with, who can put in this hat of your leader or your leader's leader, and find out the way you're problem solving is actually the right thing for the company. Super important to use mentors who can even be like, sharing things with your boss in the back channel to find out more information before you actually, you know present to your boss, and then giving that information back to you to make your plans even better. So using mentors super important. And figure out also ways in which you can give back to your mentor. Remember, if the mentor always has to give to you and it's a one-way relationship, it won't last as much. So figure out what your mentor is excited about. What is it that makes them tick? What is it that you can do to help advance their cause and give them back something, so that they also want to invest in this relationship with you. Yeah. um, Also remember that when you manage up, different bosses that you get every 2 years, you'll get someone new. Everyone will have a different personality. Yeah. One would be like, they're like these five characteristics that I got from a really good book, HBR Guide to Managing Up and Across, and I'd highly recommend this book. I was referencing this book for this content, and I give lots of credit to this book. Get this book, really good book. Build relationship, herd cats, gain influence, managing up and across. So in that, they came up with this five types of leaders. Some leaders that you deal with will be charismatic. They just want bottom line. Get to the bottom line, give me straightforward reasonings, and I'll solve it. So depending on the type of the leader you have, you would want to change the way you persuade them. Yeah. So if certain leaders charismatic, they care about the bottom line much more. Not that others don't, but this is their predominant characteristic, and they want straight arguments. So give them straight arguments. If you have a leader who's a thinker, who just takes all the time to think through various details and various situations, then give them that. Yeah. Give them lots of data options, and then tell them like what are the pros and cons of all of the options, and then wait. Give them time. So if you have a thinker leader, give them time. If you have a skeptic leader who will like constantly challenge every data point that you have, know that, right? If you have a skeptic leader who, at times also make decisions through gut, not necessarily with data, right? So you need to build your credibility with those leaders. And the way you do that is you exceed their expectations in terms of standards that they have, and you actually deliver. And over time they build credibility with you. Or you can use someone else that they trust, and then use them with you to co-present with you. So now all of a sudden you can borrow some of the trust that they have built with someone else. So knowing how to handle a skeptic leader and knowing where to push, how to give what information so that they can make the decision is important. You'll have a follower leader who's like, super risk averse, like, hey, not really taking on any risk, would be the last one to adopt a new technology. For them, you need like proven materials and testimonials from clients who say, hey, this technology works, we should be on it. So then that's what works for a follower leader. The controller leader is like completely unemotional. They'll only do it if they think it's their idea, right? And they will be super control freak. And they would want to be owning the idea that you have come up with, right? In a sense, you want them to own the idea that you have. So you'd want to present it in such a way that they think, yeah, it's their idea. When that happens, you have actually gained the mastery of, there's no one size fits all for how you persuade, but you'd want to think based on the type of the leader that you have, you'd want to change your style for persuasion. Yeah. And finally, don't stop at this level. Remember that there is another boss that your boss reports to, your boss's boss. Yeah. And remember, this person actually is the one who's going to make decisions, approve your promotions, approve the extra budget, approve the financial, stretch assignments that you take on. They'll be your advocate, but these are like really the ultimate decision makers. They're the ones who actually know what's going on. If a major reorg is coming, if a major project is coming that is super important for the company to operate and execute on, they're the ones who you need to be also knowing and building the relationship with, and not just with your boss. So using opportunities to actually get their advice, interact with your boss's boss, and not really hide from them is super important. Many times we just like, don't even talk, or don't even talk to our boss's boss. That's a really big mistake. We've got to find out opportunities in which we interact with them on topics that they care about. Maybe they did a presentation to your team all hands, and there was something that you really had something to contribute. You go and talk to them right after the presentation, or get up in front of the mic, talk to them. You need to build visibility with your boss's boss. Is super, super important. The best way actually is if they have a project that needs help, if you can volunteer that and actually deliver, nothing else builds better credibility and visibility and actual visibility than actually doing the work that's important. And when you can deliver and show results on what is important to your boss's priority, that's it, you know. So invite them, interact with them, take on projects, take on stretch assignments. That's what is super helpful. Certain times you can have a boss that's like micromanaging. Like, how do you deal with them? There'll be a lot of times when you will see a boss who's like so insecure and they're so anxious. Maybe they are highly incompetent. So your first step is you need to check whether is this person even capable, because their incompetence can come out as like questioning to you. It's like, hey, I want to understand how it works, but they really don't understand, so they keep asking you. And so then you first need to check whether they are incompetent. If so, you need to really work around it. You cannot make someone competent. It's their job. But in case that they are incompetent and also not helpful, then you need to figure out strategies in which you work with them. So in a sense, it starts with finding out like what's really causing this anxiety. Maybe the work that they have taken on is not manageable. Maybe they're not capable enough to handle the stress. They're not capable enough to with the skill sets required to deliver the project, but they just were promoted maybe too prematurely. And in that case, you would want to check there is a real problem. Sometimes you will find a leader who's really capable but micromanaging because they really want to up level your skills. They don't agree with the quality of the work that you do. And so at that time, you need to start again with building trust with them, finding out how you learn from them. These are the great leaders. Even if they micromanage, you can build trust and actually deliver and get better results because you will be better off. You will learn more from them. Yeah. Um, and once you build trust, you can change those dynamics where you can set boundaries and say, hey, this is a role. You will, this is when you will check for progress. This is how we measure success. This is when you will come in. This is when I'll ask you for help. And you gently nudge them saying, hey, you can provide a much better leverage of your time, not into this project with this set of questions. I'll do that. You can provide better values somewhere else, and with a higher value with the team. So you can tell them that, you can nudge them that, but in a sense, take care of yourself. This relationship can be very complicated and toxic. So if you have a leader who is incompetent and you cannot work with them and they're highly micromanaging you, at best you can step up to help with some of the weaknesses that they have, but you'd want to set boundaries at beyond a certain point, get help, and actually take care of yourself, by either fixing the relationship by stepping up when you can, but get help from HR, get help from move to some other team if it doesn't work. So take care of yourself. That's a super important thing. Last but not the least, providing feedback. Remember, if you want to provide feedback to your boss or your boss's boss, be very careful because it's super hard. It's super hard because the biggest thing needed to provide feedback is you really need to have a very strong trust relationship with that boss. If not, they will not take it correctly for most of the part. So if you have a really good relationship and they invite you to tell them in a private setting, then yeah, tell them, give them the feedback. That's helpful, and focus on what you perceived as, not like what they did wrong or what the outcome was. That'll give them, an opportunity to listen, course correct. But for most of the times, upward communication of feedback is super hard unless you've built that relationship. So best case is to use anonymous feedback and 360-degree feedback and build that trust first before you can actually provide effective feedback that lands. Because at the end of it, you want to manage them, right? And remember, these people are going to be gone in 2 years. So look, corporate ladder is a super interesting ladder. And a lot of this really depends on, like, is your organizational healthy or not healthy? You will find times when your same company that you started, when you joined, it was like super abundant in terms of like there's work, more work than people, and so there is like no one really fighting and no one really backstabbing each other, right? But at times you will see that the organization matures and it's like, look, there's nothing really around and there's very little going around, and so more and more people are just like taking things from others. So if you start to see your organization not being healthy and people are not really supportive, then that's an uber step that you want to start to think as you evaluate the health of your organization. Because no matter what you do here, maybe your boss is going to get fired, maybe your boss is going to get laid off. You spend all of this time and all of these skills to actually master, because the organization is not doing well. So understanding the structure of the organization, whether it's actually doing well, am I going to succeed in this, am I not going to succeed in this, and that depends on whether the company is doing well. Is the goals of the company exceeding every time, or is it just like they're barely meeting by? And what are the actions of the leaders? Are the actions transparent, supportive, and it's abundant, or in transparent decision making, or is it like constantly difficult to guess what's happening and there's lots of surprises? When you have that, you'd want to be careful and not assess that to the leader, but assess that to the organizational structure, which is a much bigger problem. So hopefully, managing up, I've inspired you to really do this well. These are important skill sets to become a powerful leader and to manage your managers, and becoming more proactive instead of reactive, and using all of these skills to get better, have a larger impact. Yeah, managing up. Thanks.